So here are my A-arms. Here on the left side of the vehicle, I'm looking at it from the front towards the rear. So this is the left side. And last time I showed you the jig I had built for these upper A-arms. They're aluminum. I had someone else weld them for me. And they are in the right dimension. And then also I used a jig to build these lower A-arms as well. Now these do both utilize the original ball joint and brackets, and ball joint and bracket here on the bottom from the Raptor 700. Now one of the things you might notice when you look at it this way is that there is an angle, a distinct angle, particularly on the spindle where the ball joint stud comes through, and then there's an angle here as well on the A-arm to accommodate that when it was on the Raptor 700. So I looked at that, and of course I'm reconfiguring the geometry of the front suspension here. I did a bunch of calculations and a lot of measurements, and I said, I think it's going to work. I think I'll still have enough articulation in these, articulation in that ball joint to give me the movement that I need. And I got it all together. And I was wrong. It didn't have enough movement in the compression part of the cycle. Not much, very much at all. So basically, back to the drawing board and build another 4 A-arms. Okay? So one of the things I did is I went on and I found these ball joints for a Raptor 700 for custom, if you want to build some custom arms, which is exactly what I'm doing. So it's got the right tapered shaft there, and these come in square. You can also find these at an angle as well. So that was my starting point. Coming over to the other side here, you can see I've built one side of this now. So I started with those ball joints I was talking about, and then with some bungs and some new hardware. It's all steel up top now, so I could build it myself. And that's more or less it. I've got it tacked together. I've got this little side brace just sort of taped on at the moment, but this is tacked onto the arm here. I was able to reuse the bushings from the A-arms. That's one thing I didn't have to buy. I did buy these rod bolts, and I also put a few washers in here on either side so I get a really quick caster adjustment. You can see also I've got a lot of adjustment here on for the ball joint as well as here. Got them here on these rod bolts as well, and then on the quick caster here. On the bottom, not so much adjustment because this is really where all the cantilevered spring force is going to go, right into the shaft and out here. You can see I rebuilt this, really beefed it up, top and bottom. Got plates on the bottom as well, if you can see that, so it can take the force. So now I'm building the upper A-arms. And I wanted to reuse as many parts from the original donor vehicle as possible. So I actually took the lower A-arms from the front suspension and harvesting the parts out of those. So this is a part that's actually cut off of the A-arm right now. But as you can see, it's the full assembly, and this is the way it bolted into the chassis. And it's got a grease fitting, it's got bearings, it's got everything I need. And I'm really not loading this part any more in the new car than I was on the old. So this is going to be going from aluminum to steel. The old upper A-arms were aluminum, so this is going to be far stronger, really overbuilt. But it's about as light as I can build it in my shop. So once you look inside this assembly, this is what you have over here. You've got a bolt that goes all the way through. You've got a sleeve, basically a bearing. And you've got 2 plastic bearings that go on top of that. Then end caps, washer, and the nut. So when you look at it, it might not look that strong to you, but it's strong enough for an ATV bouncing over rocks. And this is just a street car with a close to the same weight and probably much less stressful. So I think I'm going to be fine. So in order to harvest those parts and use those, I need to use this casing because these bearings fit tightly, snugly into the inside diameter of this. Unfortunately, this is a metric-sized piece of tubing that I cannot get locally. So what I need to do is I need to harvest that piece and use it in my my A-arms and the pivot point on that. So it goes from this to this, where I strip it down, and you can see here, it's just a piece of pipe. It does have a grease fitting, which I'm going to use as well. Then what I do is I cut that off into basically this piece right here. Same piece, good welding surface, and I've got the outside diameter is very, very close to 1 inch. So I basically took some 083 wall 1 inch pipe and I welded onto that. And when it's all finished, it will look like this. I don't know if you can tell, but I have taken those end pieces, this is about where the weld is, put on a short section of 1 inch pipe, and then welded on another one on the other end. So how do you connect all this? Well, on the upper A-arm, the way it's made, there is a long bolt that goes through with, again, a really long shaft that's just that size. Now, this is a fixed length, so what I did is, since that the attachment points that I'm going to be using here on the end are rod bolts, which are thicker than original, I actually cut down the inner sleeve to accommodate that, so I still have room to put a nut on the end. With these redesigned A-arms, I've got a fair amount of movement in them now, considering what I need for a small vehicle like this. I've got about 3.5 inches in either direction, both compression and droop. So I should be in good shape.